Today I am going to show you how to turn a major scale into an improvised idea. So if you are ready to unravel the mysteries of improvisation, then you are definitely going to want to check out this video. Improvisation is one of my all-time favorite things to teach, and that is because you can hear huge gains in a short period of time, especially for people who are new to improvising. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to turn scales into a solo. So that might sound pretty difficult, but it's actually going to be very easy, and I'm going to take you through it step by step. If you'd like to get a way more in-depth version of this and learn how to improvise from the very beginning all the way up into an early advanced range, I do have courses in the Scott Paddock Sax School that teach this, where we have play-alongs, and I teach you about chord changes and how to improvise going between chords and all kinds of stuff like that. So if you'd like to dive deeper, you can check that out. But for today, I'm going to show you a really simple way to turn a scale into a solo. So the first thing you need is a scale. As saxophone players, we love the G major scale. So the first thing you want to do is play a G major scale. Now we are going to do this in a jazz style, so I'm going to play the G major scale again, but this time I'm going to swing the eighth notes. The first step is to play the major scale again, but this time change the rhythm so it doesn't just sound like swing eighth notes. Pretty simple, right? We're just taking that scale and making it sound a little bit more interesting by changing the rhythm. The next step is to extend the range beyond the roots. So in other words, instead of just playing between G and G, I'm going to go up above a G and below a G. So I'm going to go up probably to a high D and all the way down to a low D. So I'm just going to be playing my major scale, my G major scale, all the notes in order, but I'm going to change the rhythm and I'm going to go over the range of the saxophone. Now that wasn't the coolest sounding solo ever, but it definitely didn't just sound like I was playing a major scale. You could hear that I had some other stuff going on and it sounded more like an improvised solo. This next step is going to make it sound a whole lot more like a solo. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to play the G major scale over the range of the saxophone, but this time I'm going to snake through the scale. Now all that means is instead of just going all the way up and then all the way down, I'm going to go up a few notes, then down a few notes, and then up more notes and down more notes. So it's going to be snaking through the scale. So it's going to sound like this. So as you can hear, I'm not just going up and I'm not just going down, I'm snaking through. So I'm going up some notes and down some notes. If you're watching this video, then I'm guessing that you are either starting your improv journey or you would like to get a whole lot better at it. If that's the case, then I'd like to invite you to come check out the Scott Paddock Sax School. In my sax school, I have an entire course dedicated to improvisation, and in that course, I start at the very beginning and I take you step by step, learning everything you need to know all the way up through early advanced improvisation. So you'll learn how to improvise using chords and scales, how to transition between chords, how to read chord progressions, what voice leading is, all kinds of stuff when it comes to improvisation. So if you are looking to get your improv chops together, you are definitely going to want to check out that course. I also have courses dedicated to just about anything you want to learn on the saxophone. So if you'd like to take a giant step forward in your saxophone journey, come check me out at the Scott Paddock Sax School. I'll put a link in the video description below. That makes it sound a lot more like a solo, and when we incorporate this next step, it's going to sound totally like a solo. And that is, we are going to jump to some notes. So in other words, instead of just playing scale-wise motion, every now and then we're going to jump to a note. So at this point, it doesn't really matter what note you jump to, as long as it is a note in the G major scale. So you can stop at any note and jump to another one as long as it's in the G major scale. When I do that, you can definitely hear an improvised idea coming to life. Now, when it comes to notes in the major scale, they are not all equal. We do have some notes that are more important, and those are your chord tones. In the key of G major, those notes would be G, B, D, and F sharp. They are your first, your third, your fifth, and your seventh. So when you jump to those notes, everything is going to sound even better. Now, you don't have to only jump to those notes, but those are your main notes in the scale. So if you jump to a chord tone, everything is going to sound really good. We started off with a major scale, then we started snaking our way through it, and then we started jumping around in the snaking through the scale. Now we are going to add the next step, which is jumping to intervals. So when I say intervals, I just mean don't play scale-wise motion. The easiest interval to start off with is the interval of a third. So if you play thirds, you can hear those thirds, G to B, then A to C, then B to D. If I do that back to back, that is going to give your scale more texture, and it's not going to sound so scale-wise motion. So besides just jumping around in your scale, you want to think about adding in some intervals, and those intervals can be any interval, but starting off with a third is going to be the easiest way to do it, and you can do any third in the scale. So G to B, or A to C, or B to D, C to E, so on and so forth. The next step is going to make everything you play sound a whole lot more interesting, and that is don't always start on the root. So the root is the 1, so in this case, in the case of the G major scale, that would be G. So we don't always want to start on the G. If you do that, everything you play is going to sound the same and a little bit boring. So you want to start on some other notes, and chord tones are a really great starting point. So start on one of your chord tones other than the root, B, D, or F sharp. Now you can start on the root some, but you want to break out of the habit of always starting on the root. So here are some examples. That time I started on the 3, which is the B. This time I'm going to start on the 5, which is the D. And now I'm going to start on the F sharp, which is the 7. So don't always start on the root. Let me repeat this because this is a big mistake that people new to improvising make a lot. Do not always start on the root. Now that we've talked about how to create an improvised idea with your major scale, let's talk about how to organize it so that it sounds good. And the way we do that in music is through phrases. And generally, a complete thought is a 2-bar phrase. Now you can have phrases that are longer than a 2-bar phrase, but when you first start off with your improv journey, thinking in 2-bar phrases is going to make what you play sound really good, and they're all going to go together as you play them back to back. So here's an example of a 2-bar phrase. That was a 2-bar phrase, and then when you start stacking these 2-bar phrases back to back, everything's going to sound good. It's going to sound like you're having a conversation. So thinking and playing in 2-bar phrases is going to organize your improvisation ideas and make everything you play go together. Up until this point, we've been talking about improvising using your entire scale. However, if you want to make your improv sound more interesting, you also want to include some riffs or licks or cells or whatever you want to call it. And that is when you use 2 or 3 or 4 notes to come up with an idea. A really great starting point is just using the 1 and the 7. In this case, that'd be a G and an F sharp, and coming up with a 2-bar phrase. So adding that into your scale-wise motion improv is going to give you a different sound to work with your improv. You can also do this with 3 notes and changing up your rhythm even more. So this time I'm going to use the first, second, and third, so G, A, and B. So I'm just using those 3 notes and I'm coming up with a little 2-bar musical improvised idea. So I'm repeating notes, I'm going back and forth between those notes. I'm not just playing up and down the scale. I'm using a couple notes in the scale to come up with an idea, a lick or a riff, whatever you want to call it. So when you add all of those things to your major scale, it makes it very, very easy to turn your scale into an improvised solo. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. If you'd like to dive deeper into my saxophone world, come check me out at the Scott Paddock Sax School.